Hi everyone. Today we're going to dive into the harsh and rather grim everyday life of a medieval astrologer. Forget about magical stars and mysterious predictions. Our hero's life is filled with cold, dirt, hunger, and constant danger. But before you get comfortable, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is there. I'm really curious to see who's joined us today. Now, get cozy. We're starting. You awake before the sun. There is no rooster to announce the hour, but the stale chill tells you that the night is finally ending, although there is no real difference between darkness and day in your little room. You do not remember the last time you slept through the night. The straw mattress under your aching back is so thin that it might as well not be there. You spent another night wrestling with rats who believe that your bed is also theirs, and most mornings you find fresh evidence of their victory in the form of droppings scattered across the floorboards. Your blanket, if it can be called that, is a ragged patchwork of faded wool and burlap, stitched together so many times that it is now more whole than fabric. You wrap yourself tighter in it, but the damp air gnaws at your skin and seeps into your bones. You shiver, not just from the cold, but from the anticipation of another day in a world that seems to have been created solely for the purpose of making you miserable. You stare up at the beams overhead, watching your breath turn to mist. The ceiling is low, and in the dim light, you can just make out the spider webs, heavy with dew. They glisten like silver threads, a reminder that you share your quarters not only with rodents, but also with insects of every imaginable shape and size. Sometimes you think you hear the spiders whispering, but that, of course, is nonsense. Only the wind speaks here, moaning through the cracks in the wall, carrying the sour stench of the alley below. You contemplate the day ahead, calculating how long you can delay leaving your wretched cell. Hunger makes the decision for you. Your stomach grumbles in a language older than the stars you pretend to understand. You reach for the crust of bread you set aside last night, hidden beneath a chipped wooden bowl. The bread is already hard as stone, and the surface has grown a thin green fuzz. You scrape off the mold with a fingernail, not for the first time, and pop the bread into your mouth. You chew for what feels like an hour, the stale crust scraping your gums raw. It tastes of dust and regret, but at least it is something. You pour yourself a mug of water from the bucket in the corner. The water is cloudy and tinged with the taste of wood and iron. It is better not to think about where it came from or what else might be living in it. Sometimes you dream of honeyed wine or hot tea, but you know better than to indulge in such fantasies. Water is a luxury for people like you. You run your tongue over your teeth and wince. One feels loose, another aches from rot. You do not remember a time when your mouth did not hurt. You suspect that, one day soon, you will lose all of them. The town barber will offer to pull the rest with his rusty pliers for a fee you cannot afford. Until then, You endure the pain as you do everything else. The first light creeps into the city through the cracks in your shutters. You rise, wrapping the blanket around your shoulders, and shuffle to the battered chest where you keep your clothes. There is no choice to be made, for you own only one set. Your tunic, once blue, is now a muddy gray. Your trousers are patched at the knees and stained with things you would rather not name. Your shoes are little more than leather flaps held together with string. You pull them on, feeling the cold creep in through the holes. You glance at the small shelf above your bed where your most valuable possessions sit. There is a thick, battered book, an astrological treatise copied by hand over long winter nights. Its cover is worn, the pages warped from damp and smudged with ink and candle wax. Next to it is a scrap of parchment covered with your spidery notes and calculations. There is also a stub of a quill and a small pot of ink, which you guard more fiercely than your own life. These are the tools of your trade, though they bring you little joy and even less comfort. You sigh and prepare yourself for the day. You know that out there, beyond your door, lies a city that hates you almost as much as you hate it. The alleys are narrow, the air thick with the scent of refuse and rot. The people do not trust a man who watches the stars. They would rather believe in miracles or curses than in the slow and careful turning of the heavens. You gather your things and hesitate, your hand on the door. For a moment, you consider lying back down, pulling the blanket over your head and pretending that the world does not exist. But you know what awaits if you linger too long: hunger, illness, and perhaps worse, discovery. In a place like this, suspicion is a death sentence, and you cannot afford to attract attention. Your life depends on routine, on blending into the background, on being neither seen nor heard unless summoned. You open the door and step into the morning fog. The street is silent, save for the distant barking of a dog and the cry of a vendor somewhere far away. The city is waking, reluctantly, and so must you. Your breath forms clouds in the air as you set off, shoulders hunched, eyes downcast. Another day has begun, and you are still here. There is no glory in your life, no hope of greatness. You are an astrologer, but in truth you are little more than a beggar with a book. Each morning is the same as the last, cold, hungry, and utterly without promise. The best you can hope for is to survive until tomorrow, and even that is not guaranteed. You pull your tattered cloak tighter and begin the slow walk through the labyrinth of filth and misery that you call home. The sun will rise, the stars will fade, and the world will go on, oblivious to your suffering. You wonder, not for the first time, if the stars care at all. You step out into the narrow street, and the city greets you with its usual bouquet, a heady combination of rotting vegetables, horse dung, and a scent you have come to associate only with hopelessness. The fog is so thick you can barely see your own hand in front of your face. You are certain, however, that if you reached out, you would touch nothing but filth. Every step is a cautious negotiation with the uneven cobblestones slick with last night's rain and whatever else was dumped from the windows above. Above you, shutters slam open as someone empties a chamber pot straight into the gutter. You flatten yourself against a wall, but the splash is unavoidable. The icy liquid seeps through your shoe and into the threadbare wool around your ankle. You grimace, but no one apologizes. In this city, no one even looks at you unless you have something they want, and then they look at you the way a butcher looks at a pig, calculating, impersonal, and with a hint of contempt. The alleys twist and wind as if designed to confuse newcomers and trap the unwary. You know every crooked stone, every hidden hole, every shop sign painted with crude symbols for those who cannot read. And yet, no matter how well you know your route, you are never truly safe. Danger lurks in every shadow. Sometimes it is the city guard, swaggering with their clubs and their petty power, eager to prove themselves on a suspicious figure like you. Sometimes it is a pack of children with stones in their fists and no mercy in their hearts. You try to avoid both groups. The guard will shake you down for coins you do not have, and the children will simply rob you for the joy of it. A beggar with one eye nods to you from his corner. You recognize him from the market square, where he howls all day about visions and miracles. He knows you are no threat, but he does not trust you either. No one trusts anyone here, not even those with nothing to lose. Trust is a luxury for fools and those who have never missed a meal. You keep to the middle of the lane where it is driest, stepping over heaps of garbage and animal bones. Rats skitter in and out of sight, fat and fearless. You envy them. At least they belong here. Sometimes you wonder if you are not simply another rat, scurrying, gnawing, surviving on scraps, despised by all. You pass by the butcher's stall. Blood pools beneath the chopping block, and the butcher's apron is stained deep red. He eyes you warily, as if you might hex his sausages or curse his knives. You nod politely and hurry past. It is better not to linger. There are stories, always stories, about people who linger in the wrong places at the wrong time and are never seen again. No one asks questions. The city swallows its secrets whole. A fishwife hawks her wares, shrill voice slicing through the morning gloom. Her stall reeks of brine and spoiled catch. She offers you a sardine with a wink, but you know better than to accept. Nothing is free, and everything comes with a price. The last man who took her gift ended up in the stocks, accused of theft. The crowd threw rotten cabbages until he fainted. The city is generous only with cruelty. A group of apprentices, faces smeared with soot, jostle past you, shoving and jeering. One calls you a stargazer and spits at your feet. Another asks if you can read his fortune, then threatens to break your nose if he does not like the answer. You keep your eyes down, mouth shut, and move on. You have learned that silence is your best defense. To answer is to invite trouble, and trouble is always easy to find. Your stomach growls again, and you remember a time when you believed cities were places of wonder and opportunity. You were younger then, and even more foolish. You thought the world had room for knowledge, that people wanted to understand the heavens. Now you know better. The city is a living thing, a great beast with endless appetite and no heart. It chews up dreamers and spits them out as beggars, thieves, or corpses. A cart rumbles past, drawn by a sway backed horse. The wheels catch in a rut, sending a fresh wave of mud across your legs. You do not bother to brush it off. You have long ago abandoned the idea of dignity. Mud is easier to wear than pride. You reach the market square, a crowded, churning pit of noise and movement. Merchants shout over one another, hawking wares that are half rotten or half fake. Pickpockets drift like shadows among the crowd, eyes darting, fingers nimble. You feel their gazes settle on you, weighing your worth. You have nothing they want, so you are ignored. For once, this is a relief. The city has no patience for weakness and less for outsiders. Your accent marks you as someone from another region, and your profession marks you as someone to be feared or hated. Children point and giggle behind your back, making the sign against evil. Old women cross themselves when you pass, muttering prayers to ward off misfortune. Sometimes you think the city is laughing at you, mocking your efforts to survive. A bell tolls in the distance, marking the hour. You pause for a moment, counting the chimes. It is still early, and you have many streets to cross before you reach the place where you work. You steel yourself and keep walking, blending into the flow of humanity as best you can. The day is young, but you are already tired. You feel the weight of the city pressing down on you, squeezing the hope from your bones. Every breath tastes of smoke and rot. Every sound is a reminder that you are not welcome here. But you keep moving. To stop is to invite disaster, and disaster is something you have had enough of. You make a silent promise to yourself. You will endure this day as you have endured all the others. You will navigate the filth and the danger, the suspicion and the scorn. You will find a way to survive, even if it means becoming invisible. After all, in this city, it is the unseen who live the longest. You finally reach the corner where the public well sits, an ancient stone circle blackened by centuries of dirty hands. The air here is sharper, tinged with the metallic taste of wet stone and something sour that no one can identify. The line at the well is always long, a silent congregation of women, children, and the old, all clutching buckets, jugs, and battered pots. No one speaks. Conversation is just another chance to make enemies or attract attention, and everyone here has enough trouble. You join the queue, shifting your weight from one numb foot to the other, clutching your dented tin mug. You stare at the ground and listen to the gentle drip of water, the sighs of the waiting, the soft curses when someone is caught cutting the line. Ahead of you, an old woman spits into the dirt. Her teeth are gone, her cheeks sunken, and her eyes sharp as needles. You catch her glance and immediately look away. The city is full of people who remember insults that were never given and slights that were never meant. When your turn finally comes, you lower the bucket on its fraying rope. The pulley groans like a dying animal, and the water comes up cold, cloudy, and dotted with things you do not want to examine too closely. The surface quivers with the memory of something alive. You fill your mug, hands shaking from cold and fatigue, and take a sip. It tastes like stone, iron, and rot, an alchemist's brew, but never one of healing. You wash your face quickly. The cold is so biting that it feels like tiny knives dancing across your skin. You try not to think about the last time you washed properly. In the city, no one bathes often, and those who do are considered either mad or sick. Public bathhouses exist, but they are dangerous places, haunts for thieves, gossips, and, on bad days, city guards looking for bribes or victims. You went once, years ago. It was not worth the risk. Your fingernails are rimmed with dirt, your hands cracked and raw. There is a rash along your wrist, always itching, never healing. You wonder sometimes what it would be like to be clean, to feel warm water run over your body, to scrub away the layers of grime and guilt. It is a fantasy, as unreachable as the stars themselves. A child laughs nearby, chasing a hoop through the mud. He slips and falls, landing in a puddle that is more sewage than water. His mother yanks him up by the arm, scolds him, and wipes his face with a rag that is only marginally cleaner than the puddle. You watch them go, thinking that you were once that small and that hopeful. The world was different then. Or maybe you simply did not notice the filth because you were part of it. You leave the well and walk past the tanner's yard. The stench is overwhelming, a fetid wave that drives even the boldest rats away. Piles of skins sit in brown water, hair floating on the surface, dogs snarling at the edges for scraps. The tanners themselves do not notice the smell. It has become a part of them. They walk through the city untouched, marked by their craft, their hands stained the color of old bruises. Even the city guards avoid them. You catch a glimpse of yourself in a puddle, a distorted reflection, ghostly and vague. Your face is lined with dirt, your hair matted, your eyes red rimmed and wary. You could be anyone or no one. You try to remember the last time you felt truly human. It is a memory as faded as your childhood blanket. You think of the nobles, those distant, untouchable creatures who bathe in rosewater and surround themselves with scented oils. They have servants to scrub their backs and comb their hair, to perfume their bodies and launder their linens. You envy them, though you suspect they are just as miserable, only in finer clothes. Even the king cannot escape the city's stench. It seeps into every hall, every corridor, every velvet drapery. The difference is only in the thickness of the walls and the softness of the bedding. You pass a group of washerwomen at the river, beating linens against stones. Their hands are swollen, their skin raw and bleeding. The water runs black with filth. They joke and curse, their laughter sharp as knives, but you sense the exhaustion beneath it all. Nothing here is ever truly clean. Every stain is simply replaced with another, every foulness masked with a heavier scent. At home, you keep a bucket by your bed for the nights when you cannot make it outside. You empty it in the alley each morning, hoping the neighbors do the same. Sometimes they do not, and the stench rises in waves, crawling through the cracks in the floor and up into your dreams. You try not to dwell on what lives in the darkness: fleas, lice, bedbugs. They bite and feed, leaving you with rashes and welts. You scratch in your sleep, wake to blood under your nails, and wonder how many more nights you can stand it. Disease is everywhere. Fevers sweep through the city like fire, taking the weak, the unlucky, and sometimes the innocent. You hear rumors of healers who can cure anything, but they always ask for silver, and silver is something you never have. You settle for prayers and old wives' tales, a pinch of salt, a sprig of thyme, a whispered word to the stars. It helps as much as anything, and so you live in the city's filth, day after day, your skin growing thicker, your hopes growing thinner. Cleanliness is for another world, a world that will never be yours. You clutch your bundle of precious papers, scraps, star charts, a worn astrological treatise, and begin your journey to the only place in the city that grants you the faintest illusion of importance: the scriptorium, sometimes called the house of knowledge. It is not far, but every step through the city is a test. The path winds between rows of decaying timber houses, over cobbles slick with last night's rain and the waste of 1,000 careless hands. Your progress is slow. The streets are alive with their own brand of hostility. On some corners, the city guard lingers in pairs, their eyes narrowed, hands idly gripping the shafts of their spears. They watch everyone, but especially you. They remember your face, or maybe they just remember that you are a little different, a little too clever, a little too careful with your words. You know better than to meet their gaze. If you do, you risk a search, a demand for papers, or simply a beating for their amusement. Once you were stopped and questioned for an hour while a bored captain pawed through your notes, misreading your star calculations for coded messages to some foreign power. You tried to explain the difference between Mars and the plague, but he only heard the sound of your accent and saw the ink stains on your hands. You escaped with bruises, a warning, and the realization that every day you leave your room, you play dice with fate. You pass a group of apprentices hauling barrels, laughing too loudly at jokes about scholars and bookworms. One throws an apple core at your feet and calls out, "Hey, stargazer, tell us if the sky says rain." You keep walking. To answer would invite more attention, and you have learned that the only thing more dangerous than being unknown in this city is being noticed. The scriptorium is housed in a converted chapel on the edge of the merchant's quarter, wedged between a slaughterhouse and a tanner's shop. The smell is unforgettable, a mixture of burning tallow, wet parchment, and something acrid that never quite fades. As you approach, you see other men and women hovering by the door, their robes patched and ink stained, eyes flickering with the same hunger that drives you. There is camaraderie here, but it is brittle, always tinged with suspicion. The city breeds suspicion the way it breeds rats, efficiently and endlessly. You nod to the guard at the door, a pockmarked brute who remembers you as that strange one who talks to himself. He waves you through, uninterested unless you cause trouble. Inside, the air is only marginally warmer, but the noise of the street falls away, replaced by the steady scratching of quills and the soft thud of books being moved and sorted. The scriptorium's overseer, Brother Henricus, sits behind a battered desk, surrounded by ledgers and a haze of dust. His habit is stained, his beard flecked with crumbs. He eyes you as if calculating the precise moment you will cease to be useful. Late again, he mutters, astrologers always chasing the dawn. You force a smile and bow your head. It is easier to accept blame, to slip into the role of the harmless fool, than to argue for your own worth. Your place is at the back, by a broken window that never quite closes, no matter how many times you stuff it with rags. The workbench there is scarred with knife marks and ink spills, testament to decades of frustrated scribes. You lay out your tools, the battered treatise, your notes, a stub of a candle, a precious drop of ink. You check the room for unfriendly eyes before you begin your real work. Outside these walls, you are a target. In here, you are only slightly less so. The church tolerates the scriptorium, but with conditions. Most of the work is tedious, copying sermons, legal contracts, genealogies for minor nobles, hoping to prove descent from someone who mattered. You take what scraps of time you can to transcribe your own observations, adding to your secret charts in the margin, hiding astrological diagrams behind pages of pious commentary. You know the risks. Last year, a fellow scholar disappeared after an anonymous denunciation. His desk was cleared the next morning, and no one ever mentioned his name again. Everyone assumed he had gone too far. Too many questions, too many strange books, too much curiosity for a city that prefers ignorance. You have learned to keep your secrets close, to mask your hunger for knowledge with an air of boredom and docility. The scriptorium itself is no paradise. The candles sputter, the air is thick with mold, and the shelves groan under the weight of worm-eaten manuscripts. The other scholars eye you with a mix of envy and contempt. No one trusts an astrologer, especially one who seems to know things he should not. Once, you caught two of them rifling through your papers, hoping to find proof of heresy or a secret worth selling to the city guard. And yet, for all its dangers, the house of knowledge is the closest thing you have to sanctuary. Here, at least, you can lose yourself in your work, tracing the slow, steady dance of the planets across the heavens, hoping that some scrap of meaning will reveal itself amid the gloom. When the bells toll for midday, you rub your tired eyes and look out the cracked window. The city sprawls below, gray and endless, every rooftop slick with filth, every alley choked with shadows. You feel the old ache in your bones, the one that tells you you do not truly belong, not here, not anywhere. Still, you return to your notes, fingers cramped and stained, heart pounding in your chest. The road to knowledge is steep, lined with dangers more subtle than any knife in the dark. You tell yourself it is worth it, that all this misery and fear will one day make sense, that the stars themselves will reward your perseverance. But today, as every day, the only reward is the chance to keep searching. Books are rare in your world, so rare, in fact, that to own more than one or two is to mark yourself as either a member of the church, the highest nobility, or, just as likely, a heretic. As you sit hunched over your battered treatise, you feel the weight of suspicion as keenly as the ache in your back. Every page is a treasure, every letter a risk. The treatise before you is not yours by right. It has passed through so many hands, each one leaving its mark in the margins, corrections, curses, prayers, and the occasional crude drawing. Its cover is cracked and patched with wax. The binding is frayed. A corner is stained with what might be candle wax or blood. You do not ask which. On some nights, as you turn the heavy pages, you catch yourself listening for the footsteps of someone who might want it back. You hide your treatise under your shirt on the way home, clutching it to your chest like a secret child. The thought of losing it gnaws at you. Sometimes, late at night, you imagine city guards bursting in, eyes gleaming with the promise of a reward for discovering forbidden knowledge. You picture yourself dragged out into the street, your precious book tossed onto a fire while the crowd jeers and spits. The image is always so vivid you can taste the ashes. Possession is not the only risk. Reading is itself a dangerous act. Most people in the city cannot read at all, and those who can usually confine themselves to the Bible, the Book of Hours, or the names on coin purses. To read anything else, especially something about the stars, with mysterious signs and foreign words, is to invite questions. You remember an old man who once taught you to read numbers in the stars. He was found in the river one morning, and nobody asked why. At the scriptorium, there is an unspoken hierarchy. The churchmen, with their glossed Bibles and collections of saints' lives, sit at the best tables and warm their feet by the hearth. The city's lawyers and clerks copy documents of importance, writing as if each word might buy them another meal. Scholars like you, who have no patrons, no title, and nothing but curiosity, work in the corners, hidden by shelves, and ignored as much as possible. You do your best to look humble, even when your eyes stray over the forbidden titles, an ancient herbal, a treatise on geometry, a bestiary filled with monsters that seem all too familiar. Your fingers itch to touch the pages, to discover their secrets, but you know better. The overseer keeps a careful watch. He knows which books are allowed and which are not, and he has a nose for trouble that rivals any hound. Your own treatise is not technically forbidden, but it might as well be. Astrology walks a fine line between science and heresy. Some see it as a useful tool for understanding God's plan. Others see it as a gateway to the devil's work. You are careful to copy only those passages that speak of weather and the movement of planets, never those that hint at fate or the mysteries of the human soul. Still, the margin notes, written by so many anonymous hands, are full of warnings. Trust only the church, one says. Burn this page, says another. You read them with a shudder and add none of your own. You dream sometimes of a library you once heard described, a place in the distant east where the shelves are taller than a house and the books are chained to the wall, not to protect them from thieves, but to keep them from flying away. You doubt such a place exists. Here, even the scriptorium's modest shelves sag under the weight of suspicion. The books are watched, counted, and sometimes quietly removed, never to return. The city itself seems to conspire against your studies. Rumors swirl with the winter wind. Someone saw you reading by candlelight. Someone heard you muttering foreign words. Someone noticed the odd diagrams on your scrap of parchment. The whispers follow you to market, to the well, to your very door. You learn to move quickly, to offer polite, empty answers to curious questions, to keep your treatise hidden beneath your shirt, even as the sweat makes the ink run. You keep a Bible by your bedside, not out of faith, but out of necessity. If anyone asks, you claim that you study the heavens to better appreciate God's creation. Sometimes you even believe it, but the truth is less comfortable. The stars are silent. The books are silent. Only the city speaks, and what it says is always the same. You do not belong here. Still, you cannot help yourself. Each night, by the flicker of your last candle, you return to your treatise. You trace the faded letters, whisper the foreign words, draw the planets' paths in the dust on your floor. You hope no one is listening. You hope foolishly that knowledge might one day be enough. In the meantime, you keep your book close, your head low, and your secrets closer. In the city, to read is to risk, and to risk is to live. You have learned to walk a thin line, narrower than a knife's edge, and just as sharp. The city does not love knowledge, but it hates uncertainty more. Some days, this works in your favor. More often, It is just another trap, one you navigate with trembling care. Astrology is a fickle mistress. To some, you are a wise interpreter of the divine order, a servant of God who reads the patterns he placed in the heavens. To others, you are a blasphemer, one step away from witchcraft, tempting fate and questioning God's will. The difference often depends on who is listening, how the wind blows, and what calamities have most recently befallen the city. Today, you have been summoned to read the stars for a merchant's daughter. The merchant's house is one of the few in the city with real glass in the windows. The girl is pale and frightened, her family hopeful and suspicious by turns. You keep your face blank, your voice steady. You offer platitudes about fortune and the benevolence of the Creator. You read the positions of Mars and Venus in your charts and tell the family what they want to hear, that the girl is favored, that good fortune is possible, but that prayer and humility are always wise. You choose your words with the caution of a man crossing a frozen river at night. Sometimes your clients want more. They ask for forbidden knowledge, for secrets about birth, death, and love. They want to know the future, to hear that their enemies will falter or that their sick child will recover. These are the most dangerous moments when faith and fear pull you in opposite directions. You never answer directly. You have become adept at speaking in riddles, hedging your predictions with references to God's mysterious plan and the wisdom of the church. It is always best to keep your prophecies vague, to quote scripture if pressed, to insist that the stars reveal possibilities, never certainties. You remind your clients that only the Lord knows the true path, and that the heavens are his handiwork, not a book to be read by mere mortals. You do not tell them that sometimes, in the dead of night, you wish the stars would speak more clearly to you. You certainly never tell them that you do not always believe what you say. The city is full of stories, grim tales about astrologers who crossed the wrong line, said the wrong thing, or simply made the wrong person uneasy. You remember old Master Ulrich, who once predicted an eclipse a month early. He vanished the next day. Some say he was taken by the church. Others whisper about the city's darker powers. His notes were burned in the marketplace as a warning. You watched from the crowd, silent and invisible. The church itself is an unpredictable force. There are priests who seek your counsel in private, anxious to know if their patron's influence will grow, if their rivals will fall ill, or if the weather will favor the bishop's crops. In public, these same men denounce astrology as a temptation of the flesh, a gateway to heresy, and a tool for the proud and the presumptuous. You nod along, always agreeing, always retreating. You know the scriptures better than some priests, out of necessity, not faith. The Bible is your shield, its verses your armor. You can quote the stories of the wise men from the east, of the star over Bethlehem, of the heavens declaring the glory of God. You hide your astrological charts between pages of Psalms, your calculations disguised as devotional notes. It is a dangerous game, but one you must play if you wish to survive. Sometimes you dream of a world where you could simply study the stars, where knowledge would be valued for its own sake, and where curiosity would not be a death sentence. In these dreams, you walk in gardens and speak openly of the movements of the heavens. When you wake, the city's chill reminds you that you live in another kind of world, a world where every word might be overheard, every gesture misunderstood, every moment watched. Your friends, if you have any, are as cautious as you are. They speak in whispers, share stories only in the dead of night, and always glance over their shoulders. Trust is rare and precious, as easily broken as thin ice in spring. You exchange coded messages in the margins of borrowed books, discuss philosophy only behind closed doors, and never speak the truth unless you are absolutely certain you are alone. Still, people come to you. They want what you have, even if they fear it. A mother asks for a talisman to protect her child. A baker begs for advice on when to plant his wheat. A soldier wants to know if Mars favors him before a duel. You give them answers, always cautious, always hedged with warnings. You take what payment you can, usually a heel of bread or a cup of sour wine. Sometimes you think the city needs you in its own twisted way. People crave certainty even when they know it is a lie. They want someone to blame when things go wrong and someone to praise when by chance things go right. You play your part, half priest, half charlatan, never quite safe, never quite trusted. And so, every day, you balance faith and heresy, walking the line between wisdom and madness, between truth and survival. You are an astrologer. You live on the edge of the abyss, always wondering if today will be the day you finally fall. There are days when a knock on your door sounds different, heavier, more urgent, edged with the promise of reward or ruin. On those mornings, you know it is not a frightened mother or a desperate merchant at your threshold, but someone who lives behind high walls, under the careful eye of armed men. Someone whose mood can decide your fate before you finish your breakfast. You answer such summons with care, your treatise and calculations hidden beneath your cloak. The servant sent to fetch you never meets your eyes. He walks fast, glancing over his shoulder every few steps, anxious to deliver you to his master without incident. You know better than to ask questions. In the city, curiosity is dangerous, but among the nobility it can be fatal. The manor house is always larger and grander than you remember. Real stone, not crumbling timber. Windows covered with waxed linen, sometimes even colored glass. The door creaks open to reveal a world of light and warmth, a world you glimpse only in brief moments of service. You wipe your feet, bow your head, and wait to be summoned. Noble clients are unlike the rest of the city. They look at you as if you are both a tool and a threat. They demand answers. then threaten you if your words do not please. Sometimes they call you to explain an unlucky birth, or to choose the date for a marriage, or to bless a journey with favorable stars. Sometimes they simply wish to be reassured that the heavens are on their side, that God smiles on their ambitions, and that their enemies will suffer as they rise. Today, the lady of the house sits swathed in silks, her hair a mountain of pins and pearls. Her husband is away at court, and she wants to know if he will return with a royal favor or a royal curse. You study your charts, pretending not to notice her narrowed eyes, her impatient tapping fingers. You speak in the same guarded way you always do. The stars show much movement, my lady, and Mercury is strong, a sign of news. But Saturn's presence warns of caution. The outcome is hidden, as the Lord wills. She leans forward, eyes sharp. Will he succeed or not? Speak plainly. But you never speak plainly. You have seen too many who did. You know how fast a noble's favor can sour. You tell her that the portents are hopeful, that with prayer and caution, her husband's path may be blessed. She nods, dissatisfied but not angry. She tosses a silver penny onto the table, more than you have seen in a month. You pocket it quickly. Nobles pay in coin, but the price is always higher than it seems. Their gratitude is thin, and their patience thinner. If your predictions fail, you will not be allowed to forget it. There are stories, so many stories, about what happens to those who cross the nobility. Some vanish into the night, never to be seen again. Some are found in the river, weighted down with stones. Some are simply forgotten, their names erased from every ledger, every memory, as if they had never lived. As you leave the manor, the servant slips you a warning. My lady's brother is not a friend to your kind. He listens for talk. He remembers faces. You nod, heart pounding. There are eyes everywhere in noble houses. Servants watch for any sign of disloyalty, and rivals are always ready to whisper accusations of witchcraft or treason. The city's rumors are nothing compared to the whispers in these halls. You make your way back through the twisting streets, the silver coin cold and heavy in your palm. With every step, you feel the invisible web tightening around you. You wonder if this is the last time you will see the sun rise over the city's broken rooftops. The danger never leaves, not even in the comfort of your own room. You check your door 3 times before you sleep, and even then, your dreams are haunted by memories of noble clients, smiling as they test your loyalty, frowning as they weigh your worth. The work is never simple. Once, you were asked to choose the date for a noble wedding. You chose carefully, reading the planets, offering prayers. On the morning of the ceremony, a storm swept in, flooding the square and spoiling the feast. The family blamed you, quietly at first, then loudly. For weeks you walked in fear, certain every shadow was a knife, every footstep a summons to the city watch. Another time, you advised a nobleman to wait for Mars to rise before beginning a business venture. He ignored your advice, failed, and cursed your name for his misfortune. Rumors began to circulate that you were a bringer of bad luck, a saboteur in service of his enemies. You considered fleeing the city altogether, but there was nowhere to run. Misfortune clings to you like smoke. Even when your predictions are correct, there is no safety. Nobles do not like to be reminded that they are at the mercy of fate, that the heavens pay no heed to their desires. They prefer to believe that gold and blood can buy the favor of the stars. You are useful to them only so long as your words bring comfort, or at least distraction. You never linger in noble houses. You take your payment, offer your thanks, and retreat as quickly as you can. You cross yourself as you step back onto the muddy streets, hoping the saints will remember you even if your clients do not. You know that one day, perhaps soon, your luck will run out. Until then, you endure, balancing the slim rewards of noble favor against the ever present danger of noble wrath. Each day is a gamble, and the city is always waiting to collect its due. You might think that working for the learned and the wealthy would fill your purse and your belly. You might think that all those hours spent poring over arcane symbols and squinting at the heavens would buy you comfort, or at least security. You would be wrong. The city does not reward those who read the stars. It barely tolerates them, and it pays them even less. The silver penny from the lady of the manor sits in your palm as you walk home, its gleam already fading in the weak light. It is a king's ransom compared to what you are usually given: a loaf of yesterday's bread, a handful of dried beans, a promise to tell my cousin his fortune as well. Most days, you eat what you can scrounge. The bread is often so hard, you must soak it in water before it yields to your teeth. More often than not, the water itself tastes of rust and sorrow. Your stomach is a clock, marking the passage of time with its hollow complaints. You learn to ignore the rumbling. Hunger is as constant as the city walls. It shapes your days, determines your moods, and makes even the smallest kindness, a scrap of cheese, a bruised apple, seem like a miracle. You ration every crumb, every sip, careful never to eat your fill at once, lest you wake up tomorrow to nothing at all. Sometimes, after a good day, one where a merchant presses a coin into your palm, or a baker pays you with an extra crust, you dream of buying meat at the market. You picture yourself feasting like the nobility, rich stews, roast fowl, honey cakes dripping with sweetness. Instead, you end up haggling over a few wilted onions or a wedge of moldy cheese. The market sellers know your type. They raise their prices when you approach, as if reading the stars gave you money to burn. You pass the beggars huddled by the church steps, their hands outstretched, faces blank. You are not so different from them, though your rags are cleaner and you still have all your fingers. Some days, when work is especially scarce, you wonder if you will join them, trading your dignity for a place in the soup line. On the rare occasion when you receive actual coin, you hide it with obsessive care. Coins are a beacon for thieves, for city guards looking to supplement their wages, and for anyone who thinks you do not deserve it. You have heard too many stories of men beaten senseless for a single penny or murdered for a purse containing nothing but stones. You sleep with your money tied to your belt, wrapped in a filthy cloth, and tucked under your mattress. You trust no one, not even yourself. The hunger is more than physical, it is a constant, gnawing awareness that you live on the edge of disaster. If you fall ill, there is no doctor. If your luck turns, there is no safety net. The city's poor survive by cunning, habit, and the faint hope that tomorrow will not be worse than today. You have lost count of the times you have gone to bed with nothing but dreams to fill your stomach. Sometimes you are paid in other things: a strip of cloth, a handful of herbs, a chicken with more feathers than meat. You are grateful for whatever you get, but the humiliation burns just as fiercely as the hunger. Every transaction is a reminder of your place in the city, useful when you are needed, invisible when you are not. On feast days, you watch the processions from the shadows. Tables groan with food in the squares where the powerful gather. You see children with their cheeks full of roasted chestnuts, men pouring wine into one another's cups, women laughing behind their veils. You linger at the edges, hoping for a scrap, but the guards are watchful, and you are never bold enough to beg openly. Pride is a luxury you can barely afford, but it is one of the few things you have left. You hear stories of other astrologers who fared better, who found wealthy patrons, who were allowed to dine at noble tables, who wore soft clothes and owned more than one pair of shoes. You have never met one in person. You suspect such stories are meant to keep you hoping, to keep you moving, to make you believe that tomorrow's work might finally lift you out of the mire. But tomorrow comes, and you are still hungry. You rise early, stomach aching, mind already calculating how long the scraps will last. You count your coins, count your blessings, and count the days until the next holy day, when perhaps there will be enough leftover bread for the poor to fight over. You learn not to hope for more. And yet, even in hunger, you find yourself returning to the stars. They do not fill your belly, but they offer a distraction, a sense that there is something larger than the daily grind of want and need. You trace the patterns in your mind as you drift to sleep, heart heavy, stomach empty, eyes fixed on the patch of night sky visible through your tiny window. In the end, the city always wins. It takes your coin, your strength, your hope, and leaves you with hunger as your constant companion. But for now, you survive, one crumb at a time. You have learned, over years of hardship and humiliation, that the nobility are a rare source of income and a frequent source of danger. More often, your work takes you to the common people, those who have little, need much, and trust no one who seems to know too much. It is a delicate business, seeking clients among the poor, but you are desperate enough to try. You begin each day by circulating through the market squares and tavern alleys, listening for whispered complaints and signs of misfortune. A cow that will not give milk, a child born under a bad moon, a field blighted by strange weather. These are the things that bring the people to your door, though never directly and rarely without suspicion. You walk slowly, hands tucked into your sleeves, eyes averted, ears open. You keep your voice low when you speak to them. Every word must be chosen with care, each sentence layered with caution. The common folk are superstitious and proud. They have seen enough charlatans to know when a promise is empty, yet they hunger for hope all the same. If you promise too much, they will turn on you. If you offer too little, they will go to the next peddler of charms or potions. Sometimes a mother will approach you as you pass her stall, glancing left and right before whispering her request. She wants to know if the fever that grips her son is the work of spirits or if the stars can guide her to a cure. You tell her gently that the planets do not cause sickness, but they may offer wisdom. You scribble a protective charm on a scrap of paper, something harmless and vague, and hope that her faith in it will do more good than harm. More often, you are called to bless a newborn, to ensure that the child's life will not be shadowed by misfortune. You stand in dimly lit rooms that reek of smoke and sweat, muttering prayers and drawing symbols with a trembling hand. The parents watch you with a mixture of awe and suspicion, desperate for hope, but quick to blame if fortune turns sour. You accept their offerings, sometimes a turnip, sometimes a crust of bread, once even a single filthy feather, and give thanks as if you have been handed a king's ransom. The city's tradesmen, bakers, cobblers, fishmongers, occasionally seek your guidance as well, though always in secret. Their reputations are everything, and to be seen consulting an astrologer is to risk the laughter or anger of neighbors. You meet them in the back rooms of taverns, in the shadows behind closed doors, or under the eaves of ruined chapels. They want to know if their business will survive the winter, if the stars will favor a risky trade, if their rivals are protected by charms or curses. You learn to speak in riddles, to avoid the trap of certainty. You remind them that fortune is fickle, that hard work matters more than the position of Mars or Saturn. You offer them hope, disguised as wisdom, and they reward you with wary gratitude. You leave each encounter with a little food, a little warmth, and a little more reason to fear what will happen if your advice is proven false. Not everyone seeks your help. Some villagers eye you with open hostility, muttering about devils and heresy. You pass by groups of men sharpening knives, their laughter too loud, their eyes too long on your back. You hear children shout after you in the street, mimicking the gestures their elders use to ward off evil. Old women spit when you pass, tracing the sign of the cross in the air. You do not blame them. Life here is hard enough without the added burden of uncertainty, and every unfamiliar face is a threat. You learn to accept the fear and hostility as the cost of your trade. You do not argue or plead your case. You simply move on, searching for the next house where the door will open, the next family desperate enough to risk your counsel. There are times when a neighbor's misfortune is laid at your feet. A crop fails, a child falls ill, a dog howls at midnight, and suddenly all eyes are on you. You retreat to your cramped room, barring the door, listening to angry voices rise in the street. You pray that their anger will burn itself out before it comes for you, that some other scapegoat will appear. Sometimes you are lucky, sometimes you are not. Despite the dangers, you keep going. Hunger and hope are stubborn companions. The city is filled with people who need answers, who want to believe that the heavens are watching and that fate can be bent or bargained with. You are not a priest, but you have learned to speak with a priest's careful tone. You are not a healer, but you know the value of comfort, even when it is little more than a lie. At night, when the city finally sleeps, you count your meager earnings and wonder if it is worth it. The coins are few, the bread stale, the gratitude fleeting, but for now it is enough. For now you are still needed, still called upon, however reluctantly, to give the common folk a little hope in a world that offers them none. And so you move among them, neither trusted nor reviled, a shadow in the marketplace, a whisper in the tavern, an uncertain presence in a city built on uncertainty. The city settles into uneasy silence long before true night falls. Shadows stretch across the alleys, and the last rays of the sun vanish behind rooftops jagged as broken teeth. In the hush that follows, you return to your small, cold room and close the door with a care that borders on ritual. Each bolt and latch is a prayer against the dangers of the dark, thieves, drunkards, and worse, the slow creeping fear that the world has forgotten you. You light your candle with trembling fingers, cursing as the wick sputters and threatens to die. The light is pitiful, barely more than a smear against the gloom, but it is precious all the same. It keeps the shadows at bay and lets you pretend, for a little while, that you have carved out a corner of safety. You drape your blanket around your shoulders and settle at the low table, your back pressed against the wall so that nothing can approach you unseen. It is in these hours, when the world is quiet and the only sound is the wind rattling loose shutters, that your thoughts turn inward. You reach for your battered treatise, your star charts, your worn scrap of parchment covered with notes. By day, these objects are the source of suspicion and danger. By night, they are your only company. You run your fingers over the ink stained pages, tracing lines of Latin and Greek, piecing together the patterns of the heavens as if they might offer an escape from the filth and fear below. Your mind wanders as you work. You remember the faces of the day, the worried mother, the suspicious guardsman, the noblewoman whose coin still burns in your pocket. You wonder what they are doing now, if they sleep in comfort or toss and turn like you, haunted by worries the stars cannot answer. You wonder, too, if they ever think of you, if your words brought them comfort, or if you are only another shadow in their endless gallery of doubts. Outside, the night grows deeper, colder, more dangerous. You hear footsteps in the street, muffled voices, the distant howl of a dog. You tense, waiting for a rap at your door, for the sudden shout of accusation, for the city's cruelties to come calling in the darkness. Sometimes you hear screams, short, sharp, quickly silenced. You do not rush to your window or reach for a weapon. Here, everyone knows to mind their own business after sunset. You force your attention back to your work. You chart the slow crawl of Saturn, the flicker of Mars, the dance of Venus and Mercury. You make notes on scraps of old parchment, tucking them under your mattress with the rest of your treasures. You tell yourself it matters, that the patterns you study will one day yield secrets powerful enough to change your fortune. But deep down, you suspect you are only chasing shadows. The candle burns lower. You rub your eyes and listen to the sounds of the city, water dripping from a leaky roof, a distant lullaby, the murmur of wind through cracks in the wall. Your stomach aches, but you ignore it. Hunger has become a familiar presence, easier to bear than the constant uncertainty gnawing at your soul. You are not alone in your fear. From your window, you see dim lights flickering in other rooms, catch glimpses of faces as wary as your own. You imagine the thoughts that haunt them, the debts unpaid, the favors owed, the secret hopes never spoken aloud. In the darkness, you are all bound together by misery and caution, each of you clinging to your routines, your rituals, your small comforts. There are nights when you cannot work, when the darkness is too thick and the cold too deep. On those nights, you curl up on your mattress and wait for sleep to come. You count the cracks in the ceiling, the stains on the wall, the slow beating of your heart. You remember stories from your childhood, tales of heroes and miracles, of saints who brought light to the darkest corners. You wonder if any such miracles will ever find their way to you. Sometimes your mind wanders to darker places. You remember those who came before you, other astrologers, other scholars, whose names have been wiped from memory. You wonder if you will vanish as they did, swallowed by the city's indifference, your life reduced to a pile of ashes and forgotten papers. But most nights you endure. You sit in the half light, listening to the world breathe, waiting for the darkness to lift. You tell yourself that morning will come, that you will rise again, that the city will forget its grudges long enough for you to survive another day. And so you wait, in the flickering darkness, your life a pattern of shadows and silence, always one breath away from disaster. You are an astrologer. You live in the spaces between hope and fear, between science and superstition, between the world you dream of and the world that is. You are never truly alone in the city, not even in your solitude. Death lingers everywhere, clinging to every corner, every breath. It seeps through the city like fog, invisible until it settles on your doorstep. There is no warning, no mercy, only a steady, relentless march, a rhythm as old as the streets themselves. The first sign is always the silence. The marketplace, usually so alive with shouts and quarrels, falls quiet. Doors are shuttered, windows dark. Children vanish from the alleys, and even the dogs move in wary, hungry packs. Rumors swirl as swiftly as the wind. Someone fell sick after the feast. Someone else coughed blood behind the bakery. A whole family did not answer their door this morning. No one asks too loudly for fear of being noticed. The city remembers those who draw attention, and the sick are the easiest targets of all. You know the symptoms too well. They begin as a shiver, a cough, a fever that does not break. Within days, the afflicted are writhing in their beds, their bodies covered in sores, their eyes sunken, their voices reduced to whispers. Some pray for mercy, others curse the stars, the city, or anyone who will listen. Most simply slip away, leaving nothing behind but a stench that clings to the walls and a dread that clings to the living. You have seen the city's response before. The authorities, so slow in every other matter, move with alarming speed when sickness is involved. They arrive in groups, faces masked, voices muffled, dragging the dying from their homes, tossing the bodies onto carts bound for mass graves outside the city walls. The bells toll for each lost soul, but the tolling soon blurs into a background hum as constant and meaningless as the rain. Superstition thrives in times like these. The priests blame the city's sins, calling for days of fasting and prayer. The common folk search for scapegoats, foreigners, witches, anyone whose shadow falls the wrong way at dusk. Your own position grows even more precarious. Astrologers are said to know too much, to have angered God, to have invited the plague by reading forbidden signs. You keep to your room, speak to no one, and pray that your name is not whispered in the wrong ears. Still, some find you, desperate for answers. A mother brings her feverish child, begging for a cure, for a sign, for a miracle. You can offer none. You give her a scrap of advice: boil the water, burn rosemary, pray to Saint Sebastian, and she leaves, clutching your words as if they were holy relics. You know she will come back if the child recovers, with gratitude in her eyes. If the child dies, you will hear her curses through the door, and you will fear for your own life. You watch as the city contracts in upon itself. Streets that once teemed with life are now deserted. The air is heavy with fear and the thick, sweet stink of death. Friends stop visiting. Neighbors glance away. Everyone moves with the slow caution of those who know the world has turned against them. Hunger deepens, prices rise, and those who can leave do. The rest of you endure, huddled in your corners, waiting for the sickness to pass or to claim you in turn. Each night, as you listen to the muffled bells and the distant wailing, you count your blessings, what little there are. You have not fallen ill, not yet. You avoid the well, wash your hands with vinegar, tie a rag soaked in herbs around your face. You pray, not with the passion of the faithful, but with the cold desperation of someone who knows that luck is all that stands between life and death. The plague cares nothing for learning or piety. It takes the old and the young, the rich and the poor, the devout and the heretic. You remember scholars who tried to chart its arrival in the stars, searching for patterns, for omens. They found nothing but despair. You try not to dwell on their failure or your own helplessness. There are nights when the fear grows so great you cannot sleep. You sit by your window, staring into the darkness, waiting for the sickness to announce itself with a shiver, a cough, a pain in your chest. When morning comes, you are grateful, but you know it is only a reprieve. The city will not forget your presence, nor will death. And yet, life goes on. The market opens again, slowly, tentatively. Children return to the alleys, their laughter brittle but persistent. The city draws breath, as if waking from a terrible dream. But you know better. You know that the dream is never truly over, that the shadow of death is always waiting, just out of sight, ready to sweep through the streets once more. For now you endure, haunted by the memories of those who did not survive, comforted only by the knowledge that you have, at least for another day. You have always known that your greatest threat is not hunger or sickness, but the church. The priests hold more than just the keys to salvation. They possess the power to decide who lives and who vanishes, who is blessed and who is damned. For someone like you, someone who deals in the invisible patterns of the heavens, who reads meaning in the silence between stars, the church's gaze is a burden you never wish to bear. The confrontation does not come with fire and thunder, but quietly, as so many dangers do. One cold morning, you are summoned to the parish house. The messenger is a thin, nervous boy with ink on his fingers, a scribe's apprentice who does not meet your eye. He hands you a sealed note bearing the mark of Father Gregorius. You read the summons with shaking hands, already dreading the hour to come. The parish house is an old stone building near the heart of the city, its door guarded by a pair of heavy-set brothers who watch you as if measuring your soul. Inside, the air is thick with incense and the cold light of colored glass. You are led to a small room furnished with little more than a table and two chairs. You wait, staring at a crack in the wall, until Father Gregorius enters. He is younger than you expect, with sharp eyes and a mouth set in a line that does not soften even in greeting. He gestures for you to sit and produces a copy of one of your star charts, a chart you thought hidden, perhaps betrayed by a rival or a frightened client. He places it on the table between you as one might lay down a knife. "What do you see in this?" he asks, voice even. You choose your words as if walking through a minefield. "It is nothing forbidden, Father. The movements of the heavens as God created them. I use them to choose dates, to predict the seasons, to help the faithful avoid misfortune, nothing more. He studies you for a long moment. There are those who say you claim more than that. There are those who whisper that you speak of fate, of secrets not meant for common men. You meet his gaze and fight the urge to flinch. I say only what the church allows, Father. I remind my clients that God's will is supreme, that the stars are his handiwork. He sighs and drums his fingers on the table. Astrology walks a dangerous path. There are bishops who would burn you for less than this. There are others who consult men like you behind closed doors, hungry for knowledge but quick to condemn it in public. Which am I, do you think? The question is a trap, but you have lived among traps all your life. I believe you are a wise man, Father. You know that knowledge is not evil, only its misuse. He almost smiles, then leans forward. You must be careful. I have heard good reports and bad. You are needed, sometimes more than you are wanted. But if you give cause for scandal, if you overstep the line, I cannot protect you. There are men in this city who would see you hang for a careless word. You nod, feeling the cold sweat beneath your collar. I understand. I have no wish to bring shame or suspicion upon the parish. I live quietly. I serve where I am called. He watches you a while longer, then gathers the chart and stands. Return to your work, but remember, there are eyes everywhere, and not all of them are merciful. If you value your life, keep your faith public and your secrets private. You thank him and leave as quickly as dignity allows, heart pounding so loudly you fear the guards will hear it. You do not run, though every instinct screams at you to flee. Outside, the city seems unchanged, but you feel as if you are walking a little closer to the edge of a cliff. Word spreads quickly. Some parishioners look at you with new suspicion, others with a kind of fearful respect. You are summoned less frequently, and the coins are smaller when they do come. The balance between acceptance and danger has shifted. You know that any misstep, a word, a gesture, a careless prediction, could bring ruin. You redouble your caution. You cite scripture at every turn. You remind your clients that prayer matters more than planets, that God's plan is unknowable, that you are nothing but a humble servant. You burn a handful of your more incriminating notes, choking on the smoke and loss. Yet you sense behind the church's warnings a hunger that mirrors your own. More than once, you are called to the parish house at midnight to cast a horoscope for a priest or advise a deacon on a matter of inheritance or illness. The clergy want your knowledge, but they want it quietly, deniably, hidden behind a veil of holy words. You walk this line with weary resignation. To defy the church is to risk everything, but to surrender entirely is to starve. You wonder if there will ever be a day when you can speak openly, when knowledge will not be weighed against faith and found wanting. But you know the answer. Not in this city, not in your lifetime. For now, you survive, cautious and unseen, a shadow flitting between altar and alley, your fate balanced on the sharp edge of faith. The city does not know what you do at night. It does not care as long as you make no noise, draw no crowds, and leave the sleeping dogs of suspicion undisturbed. But the stars are your true companions, and their language can only be read in darkness. So each night, after the city has tucked itself behind locked shutters and prayers, you slip out into the cold. Your rooftop is your observatory. You climb the creaking ladder, teeth chattering, heart pounding with the familiar dread that someone will see you and wonder what manner of fool studies the heavens while honest men are abed. Sometimes you hear a drunkard's song or a distant brawl echoing through the alleys, but up here you are mostly alone with your quill, your parchment, and the brittle air that stings your face and numbs your fingers. The cold is relentless, deeper than mere discomfort. It bites through layers of wool and linen, sneaking into your bones until your whole body aches. Your nose runs, your lips crack, your breath rises in ghostly clouds. Some nights, the wind howls so fiercely that you must steady your hands to keep from ruining your notes. Most nights, it is simply a persistent ache, a test of will as much as intellect. There are moments you long for a warm hearth, a cup of spiced wine, or simply the comfort of company. But warmth is rare, and you have chosen the company of stars over men. You lay out your tools, each one precious, a battered astrolabe, a chipped hourglass, your ever shrinking stash of ink. The parchment curls in the damp, the ink thickens in the cold. You record the positions of Mars and Jupiter, measure the slow crawl of Saturn, trace the constellations with frozen fingers. Your calculations grow more hurried as your hands lose feeling, but you force yourself to continue. You tell yourself that discipline is survival, that if you miss a night's observations, all your efforts will unravel. Sometimes clouds scuttle across the sky, blotting out the stars with a suffocating blackness. On such nights, you can do nothing but pace the rooftop, cursing under your breath and blowing into your hands to keep the blood moving. You wait, eyes straining for a glimpse of light, heart sinking with each passing hour. The city below is oblivious to your vigil. Its secrets are safe, its cruelties hidden by darkness. Other nights, the sky is clear, a great bowl of glittering frost. You marvel at the infinite patience of the heavens. The stars do not hurry, do not falter, do not care if you are cold or hungry or alone. They march in their endless circuits, indifferent to the miseries of those who watch from below. You find comfort in their constancy, even as your own life feels as fragile as the ice crusting on the rooftop tiles. But you are not truly alone, not up here. The city whispers its own stories, the hiss of distant arguments, the splash of water tossed from a window, the bark of a dog startled by a shadow. Sometimes you catch the eyes of a neighbor peering out from a garret window. You hold each other's gaze for a moment, neither acknowledging nor condemning. You are all fugitives from the warmth of ordinary life, all drawn to the cold for reasons you cannot quite name. When your work is done, you retreat inside, joints stiff, breath shallow, face numb. You sit by your candle and thaw, your notes spread out before you, blotched and smudged from the night's ordeal. You copy your findings, check your calculations, and stash the results in your secret cache of papers. Sometimes you wonder if all this effort matters, if anyone will ever read your observations or care about the patterns you have so painstakingly mapped. Your body pays the price. Each year, the cold lingers a little longer, the aches settle deeper. Your fingers are swollen and clumsy. Your knees creak when you climb the ladder. You cough more than you used to, and sometimes a chill will not leave for weeks. You tell yourself this is the cost of knowledge, that the heavens demand sacrifice. But the city has its own opinion. If you are seen too often, if someone notices the fever in your eyes or the rattle in your breath, they will mutter about curses and divine punishment. You take care to hide your suffering, to move slowly, to avoid the sharp gaze of suspicious neighbors. Still, you return to your rooftop each night, pulled by the silent promise of the stars. You tell yourself that what you learn will one day be worth the misery, that the heavens will reveal their secrets to you alone. In the cold, in the silence, in the endless waiting, you find the closest thing to faith that your life allows. And so you endure, wrapped in rags, clutching your notes, your breath a faint cloud against the infinite dark. The stars continue their dance, uncaring and eternal, while below you shiver and dream of a world where warmth and understanding are not so rare. You have learned to recognize the sound of suspicion, the pause in a conversation as you approach, the sidelong glances thrown your way, the sudden silence that follows your footsteps. In this city, suspicion is a form of currency. It flows through the streets more freely than silver, buys favors more surely than gold, and, like a shadow, clings to you no matter how quietly you move. It is a slow, creeping thing. At first, it is just whispers in the marketplace, the kind you can almost ignore. There goes the stargazer. He talks to himself at night. He knows when the sickness will strike. The children mock you with their chants. Old women spit after you, pass, making signs against evil. But suspicion is never content to remain idle. It grows, gathering weight and force, until even your closest neighbors look at you with wary eyes, as if you might at any moment summon a storm or curse their cattle. The city breeds informers as it breeds rats. Everyone is eager to sell a secret, to curry favor with the authorities, to deflect blame from their own doors. You never know who might be listening. A drunken laborer slumped by the tavern door, a laundress carrying a basket of linens, the quiet boy who sweeps the street for a copper coin. All are potential witnesses. All might remember something you said, or simply invent something when the price is right. You recall the first time you were summoned by the city guard. They brought you to a dank room behind the main gate, made you stand while they rifled through your notes, handling your precious charts and calculations with greasy fingers. The captain, his breath thick with wine and onions, demanded to know the meaning of every mark, every strange symbol. You have nothing to hide, do you? He asked, a grin spreading across his broken teeth. We hear things, you know. People say you bring bad luck. People say you talk to the stars. You learned then that innocence is no shield. In a world where knowledge is suspect and ignorance is prized, it is the careful, the quiet, and the unseen who survive. You answered with a humility you did not feel, stammering apologies, offering to help choose a lucky day for the captain's daughter's wedding. It saved you that time. You left with your notes intact, but not your dignity. Now you keep your secrets tighter than ever. You burn any pages that seem too daring, too ambitious, too likely to draw questions. You keep your head down in public, avoid the market when the crowds are thickest, and refuse invitations from those you do not trust. You answer questions with questions, laugh off accusations, and cultivate the image of harmless eccentricity, a fool perhaps, but never a threat. Still, you feel the net closing around you. One evening, as you return home, you find your door slightly ajar, a sure sign that someone has searched your room. Nothing is missing, but your papers have been disturbed, your meager possessions rifled through. You stand in the doorway for a long moment, every muscle tense, listening for the creak of a floorboard or the rustle of a spy behind the curtains. Only when you are sure you are alone do you gather your things, hiding your most precious notes in new places, changing your routines yet again. You know who is responsible, even if you cannot prove it. The city thrives on envy and resentment, and there are always those eager to bring you low, to trade your secrets for a few coins or a whispered favor. You see them watching you in the street, faces you know but cannot name, eyes following your every move, waiting for you to slip. You have heard of others who were not so careful. A healer in the North Quarter, accused of poisoning her neighbors, dragged from her home and beaten in the square. A scholar found dead in his bed, his papers scattered and burned. No one asks too many questions. The city is always hungry for scapegoats. Yet, for all your caution, suspicion cannot be truly avoided. It is baked into the city's stones, written into the laws, woven through the fabric of every interaction. You know that one false move, a careless word, a misjudged prediction, a client with a grudge could bring ruin. The priests remind their congregations that the devil walks among them, and your name is never far from their lips. Sometimes you wonder if the city itself is alive, a great beast with 1,000 eyes and 1,000 mouths, always hungry for gossip and betrayal. You dream of escape, of a place where knowledge is not a crime, where the stars are studied openly and wisdom is prized. But you know such dreams are as empty as your pockets. This city is your cage, and suspicion its lock. You carry on, haunted by every footstep behind you, every whisper in the night. You cling to your routines, your little rituals of safety, your constant vigilance. In the city of suspicion and informers, you trust no one, not even yourself. You have learned the price of being different, and it is paid not in coin, but in fear. Now and then, the city itself becomes too tight, its walls suffocating, its eyes too sharp. Perhaps a noble sends for you in another town, or a rumor of better fortune lures you into the countryside. Sometimes it is not ambition or hope, but fear that drives you beyond the city gates. Fear of the guards, the informers, or the latest round of suspicion. Whatever the reason, you find yourself on the road, and the road is no friend. You travel on foot, as nearly all do, carrying only what you can afford to lose: a bundle of clothes, a scrap of bread, your precious treatise hidden deep within your rags. The road is a ribbon of mud bordered by tangled brush and hunched trees, the kind that creak and groan even when the air is still. You keep your head down and your pace brisk, heart pounding with each new sound: a snap of a twig, a distant shout, the howl of a dog echoing through the dusk. Out here, every stranger is a threat. There are travelers who pass with eyes averted and lips sealed, intent on reaching their own destinations without incident. But there are others, figures who linger at the edges of the path, who watch from behind thickets and ruined walls. Some carry clubs or rusty blades. Some travel in groups, laughing too loudly or moving too quietly. You recognize them for what they are: bandits, the unspoken lords of the road. You remember stories told by the fire in better days, of men waylaid at crossroads, stripped of all they owned, left naked or dead or worse. The city's guards promise protection, but seldom leave the walls, and when they do, it is only to collect tolls or shake down honest folk. Justice is a rumor on the open road. You keep your purse hidden, your steps light. When you hear voices ahead, you melt into the undergrowth, heart hammering, clutching your bundle to your chest. Once, you see a cart overturned by the roadside, its goods scattered, its driver gone. Flies swarm thick around a dark stain in the mud. You do not linger. The living are more dangerous than the dead, and curiosity can get you killed. Sometimes you find shelter in a wayside inn, a squat, smoky building, half barn, half tavern, its roof sagging under the weight of years and storms. Inside, the air is thick with sweat and wood smoke. The innkeeper eyes you with the suspicion reserved for strangers who pay in copper and sleep with one hand on their possessions. You buy the cheapest meal you can, if you can buy one at all, and keep to the shadows, listening to the talk of the road. The stories are always the same: bandits in the woods, wolves by the river, a merchant robbed and left for dead, a peddler vanished without a trace. You hear rumors of witches, of wild men, of soldiers turned outlaw since the last war. Even the clergy travel armed, and the few who dare the road alone either pray for mercy or are fools. Sleep comes fitfully. You wedge your back against the wall and your bundle beneath your legs. Sometimes there is a scream in the night, quickly silenced, and in the morning a bed is empty and no one speaks of it. You check your belongings with trembling hands and thank the stars if nothing is missing. On the rare morning when you wake to see the sun rise over open fields, you feel almost free. There are moments, brief as a bird's flight, when the world seems open and wide, the air cleaner, the burdens lighter. You breathe deeply and try to believe that the road might offer escape, or at least a measure of peace. But the dangers are never far behind. More than once, you are stopped by men who call themselves kings of the road, demanding payment for passage. You offer what you can, some coin, a word of luck, a reading of the stars, if they are in a generous mood. If they are not, you endure the blows and count yourself fortunate to survive it all. There are times when your reputation precedes you. Someone in a roadside tavern recognizes you as an astrologer and demands a reading, threatening violence if you refuse, threatening worse if your words do not please. You perform your ritual, heart racing, making your answers as vague and hopeful as you can. A wrong word here is as deadly as a knife in the dark. You learn quickly that the dangers of the road are as constant as those within the city, just differently dressed, more obvious, less patient. On the road, there are no walls to hide behind, no doors to lock, no routines to keep you safe. Every mile is a risk, every stranger a test, every night a coin toss between safety and disaster. Yet you travel when you must, clinging to your bundle of knowledge, to the hope that you will return to the city with your body and your secrets intact. You dream of safer journeys, of kinder strangers, of a world where the road is not a gauntlet, but a gateway. But you wake each morning with aching limbs, a hollow stomach, and the certainty that this world is not yours. You would think that those who come to you for answers would know better than to expect miracles. The city is an endless well of suffering. Hope, when it appears, is small and easily broken. Yet each new client arrives clutching some desperate wish, convinced that the stars, or your words, or perhaps just the power of their own longing, can change the world. It never does, not for long. And when their fortunes do not turn, when the heavens refuse to intervene, their gratitude curdles into blame. At first, the disappointments are simple. A baker who sought your guidance for the timing of his dough finds his bread burned anyway. He comes to you muttering curses, insisting that your calculations are faulty or your intentions foul. A mother whose child does not recover after your blessing accuses you, eyes red from grief, of bringing evil to her home. Even when you offer only caution and prayer, people hear promises. Even when you warn that fate is fickle, they remember only the hope you briefly lit. You soon learn that a disappointed client is more dangerous than an outright enemy. Anger breeds quickly in the cramped rooms and cold alleys of the city. Gossip travels on fleet feet, carrying tales of your failures from one doorstep to the next. A failed crop becomes a story of your cursed touch. A sudden illness is blamed on the talisman you gave. A lover's betrayal is proof that you called down misfortune instead of luck. It is not always words. Sometimes you return to your room to find strange marks scrawled on your door in charcoal or clay. A dead rat nailed to your shutters, a handful of salt scattered on your threshold, a crude doll stuck with pins. Old women mutter darkly as you pass. Young men spit in the dirt behind you, and children invent new names for you, none of them kind. Even your few friends grow distant, wary of being seen in your company. You keep your head down and try to weather the storm. You make your predictions vaguer, your advice more generic. You avoid clients who seem too desperate, too volatile, too quick to see patterns in every misfortune. But hunger is a patient foe, and sometimes you have no choice but to answer a summons, even when you sense that nothing you say will be enough. Some come looking for vengeance, hoping that your knowledge can be twisted into a weapon. They want you to curse their rivals, to read omens of disaster for a neighbor's harvest, to predict the downfall of a hated official. You refuse, knowing all too well what happens to those caught meddling in such affairs. The disappointed leave with threats on their lips and malice in their eyes. You begin to watch your back more closely, to sleep with one eye open, to mistrust even the smallest act of kindness. A few clients, in their frustration, turn to the church or the city guard, eager to accuse you of sorcery or fraud. Each accusation is a new trial, a new ordeal. You are summoned before priests, before magistrates, before angry crowds. Each time you must defend yourself, protesting your innocence, quoting scripture, insisting that you only read the heavens as God intended. Each time you leave more shaken, more exhausted, more certain that your luck is running thin. It does not end there. Some clients, especially those from the countryside, have their own rituals of retribution. They mutter old curses in dialects you barely understand, leave offerings at crossroads, or even seek out hedge witches and cunning folk to undo your supposed magic. You hear stories of astrologers who were driven from villages, their homes burned, their names erased from memory. You wonder how close you are to sharing their fate. Even when no curses follow, the weight of failure clings to you. You feel it in the sullen stares at the market, in the chilly silences at the well, in the slow, steady withdrawal of neighbors and acquaintances. The city is a living organism, and you are a foreign body, tolerated only so long as you are useful, and quickly rejected when you are not. You tell yourself that you are not to blame, that the stars are indifferent, that fate cannot be bent by words or will. But the city does not care for logic or humility. It cares only for results, for the fleeting hope of change, and for someone to blame when that hope is dashed. At night, you sit by your candle and review your choices, your fears, your dwindling list of safe places and friendly faces. You try to steel yourself against the next accusation, the next outburst, the next disappointed client. You whisper prayers to the indifferent sky, asking only for one more day, one more chance to survive, unseen and unscathed. But even as you pray, you know the truth. In this world, every hope you give birth to is another curse waiting to return. On those rare evenings when suspicion and hunger are momentarily quiet, you turn to your true labor, the study of ancient texts. The battered treatises in your possession are written in a Latin that flickers between the familiar and the utterly alien. Their pages are warped by moisture, smudged by years of nervous hands and trembling candles. Each line is a puzzle, each word a gateway to some hidden knowledge, or, just as likely, a fresh confusion. You acquired your treatises through luck and risk. One, the oldest, was payment from a frightened merchant who could not afford coin. Another you found discarded in an alley, its cover torn, its margins filled with cramped notes and odd sigils. You treat them as treasures, hiding them beneath loose floorboards or behind the false bottom of your trunk. Only when the world is quiet do you dare to bring them into the light. Your Latin is serviceable, hard won from long nights of whispering to yourself, copying passages, puzzling over faded glosses in the margins. Sometimes the text slips into Greek or into some dialect from the distant south, and you must squint at the shapes of words, hunting for patterns. You make notes in your own clumsy script, translating phrases, jotting down questions. The treatises are stingy with their secrets. For every answer they yield, they pose two new riddles. Much of what you read is deeply practical: charts for the movements of planets, diagrams for eclipses, tables for calculating the influence of the stars at a given hour. But there are passages, strange and half blotted, that hint at deeper mysteries, cycles of fate, omens in the weather, alignments that promise disaster or glory. You have learned to treat such passages with a careful skepticism. The line between wisdom and heresy is always thinner than ink on a weathered page. The physical act of study is a trial in itself. Your candlelight is never bright enough, and your ink is always running dry. The cold makes your hands stiff. Your eyes ache from the effort of deciphering faded print. Sometimes you make mistakes, misreading a single letter and distorting an entire passage. You go back again and again, erasing, correcting, swearing under your breath, determined not to let ignorance win. And yet, there is pleasure here, even joy. The city, with all its filth and danger, falls away as you lose yourself in the measured sentences of dead scholars. You imagine them are hunched over their own manuscripts in scriptoria far away, worrying about the same things: the damp, the dark, the pressure to get each symbol exactly right. Across the centuries, you share in their loneliness and their hope. Sometimes you find marginalia left by other hands, a warning in faded red ink, a crude drawing of a beast or a planet, a prayer scrawled hastily between lines of calculation. You run your fingers over these ghosts, wondering about the lives behind them. Were they like you? Did they study in secret, fearing the knock on the door, the whisper of the informer, the cold gaze of the priest? Or were they safe, protected by the walls of a monastery, free to think and question and wonder? You are painfully aware of how fragile your knowledge is. You remember a night when a careless knock sent your treatise tumbling into a puddle. You spent hours drying the pages by the fire, praying that the ink would not run, that the wisdom would not vanish. It survived, but the lesson stayed with you. Every word you read, every truth you uncover, is balanced on the edge of loss. The treatises teach humility as much as they teach astronomy. They remind you again and again that the universe is vast and indifferent, that certainty is a luxury for the powerful and the dead. You are left with questions about the stars, about fate, about your own place in the endless, uncaring machinery of heaven and earth. And yet, you keep reading, you keep translating, calculating, drawing diagrams by candlelight. You believe, against all odds, that there is value in this work, that to study is to resist the darkness a little longer. Perhaps no one will ever see your notes, your painstaking glosses, your secret translations. Perhaps they will go up in smoke, lost to suspicion, or accident, or simple decay. But as you piece together meaning from broken Latin and half remembered grammar, you feel something like hope. Not the hope of rescue, or riches, or safety, but the quiet hope that knowledge itself is a kind of light, a frail, flickering flame that endures, even when the world does not care to see it. You might imagine that even the most wretched soul in the city finds moments of respite, that somewhere in the endless days of hunger and fear there are small islands of joy. The truth is more bitter and less dramatic. Leisure for you is not a luxury. It is a suspicious pause in the business of surviving. When it comes, it is thin and accidental, like a weak broth left after the good meat is gone. You discover that leisure is often forced upon you by exhaustion. When your mind grows too cloudy for numbers and your eyes burn from candle smoke, you lay your pen aside, not in victory, but in surrender. You stare at the cracked ceiling, counting the spiders. Sometimes you sleep, and sometimes you do not. Time trickles by, measured in drips from the leaky roof and the ticking of your own pulse. There are pleasures of a sort, but they are humble, so humble that calling them pleasure feels like a kind of defiance. On market days, you might linger near the musicians playing on the corners, the tunes half lost beneath the roar of haggling and scolding. A fiddler in torn boots, a singer with only two teeth and a voice rough as sand. The music is thin, but oddly persistent, weaving through the smells of onions and manure, carrying memories of better times you may or may not have lived. Sometimes, on a rare feast day, when the city is half drunk and less vigilant, you scrape together enough coins for a mug of sour wine. You stand in the shadows, warming your hands around the clay, savoring the brief warmth as if it were some rare medicine. For a few moments, you can almost forget the stares and the whispers, almost pretend you are part of the city's careless laughter. The wine does not taste of grapes so much as dust and regret, but it is enough. You find yourself drawn to the public square in the evenings, when the day's trade is done and the children run wild, inventing games out of whatever scraps and stones they can find. Their laughter is sharp, sometimes cruel, but at least it is alive. You watch from a distance, remembering when you too could lose yourself in play, when the world was not yet a web of suspicions and debts. There are books too, if you are fortunate. Sometimes a fellow scholar lends you a volume for a night, trusting you with his own precious treasure. You read quickly, greedy for anything new, savoring even the dullest sermon or the most repetitive prayer. When you return the book, you do so with thanks and with a silent hope that the gesture might be repaid in kind. Friendship among scholars is a delicate, hesitant thing, fragile as a moth wing and just as easily broken. Once in a while, the city surprises you with accidental grace. A baker, in a rare moment of generosity, gives you a crust of bread still warm from the oven. An old woman, remembering a kindness you offered months ago, slips you a dried apple or a pinch of herbs. The gestures are small and soon forgotten by the giver, but for you, they mark the difference between despair and survival. You tuck these moments away in your memory, a private hoard against the long winter of hardship. Your leisure is not free from danger. Too much laughter, too much ease, and people begin to wonder what you are hiding, what fortune you have found that they have not. You learn to keep your joy quiet, to stifle your smile, to offer thanks in a voice barely above a whisper. Even in moments of pleasure, caution is your closest companion. Sometimes, late at night, you allow yourself the forbidden luxury of dreaming. You imagine a world where you are not hunted, not hungry, not cold. A world where learning is celebrated, where musicians play in golden halls, where every meal ends with sweet honey and soft bread. You do not let yourself linger long in these fantasies. The waking world is always waiting, rough and relentless, eager to punish those who hope for more than they are given. Still, you gather what you can: the faint music, the taste of sour wine, the warmth of stolen bread, the flicker of a borrowed book. These are your treasures, small and unimpressive to anyone else, but enough to keep you moving. Enough, perhaps, to remind you that even in a life ruled by misery and suspicion, there are moments, brief, battered, and barely visible, where you are allowed to feel almost human. And when you are alone, After the candle gutters and the city's last laughter fades, you let yourself believe, for the smallest sliver of time, that such moments matter. Age creeps upon you so slowly that you hardly notice it at first. A stiffness in the knees, a tooth that aches when the air turns damp, a morning when you wake and realize your hair has become ashen and thin. The city does not care for the old, it barely tolerates the young. Time here is just another weight to carry, and as the years accumulate, you feel yourself growing smaller, not only in body, but in spirit. You notice gradually how the world pulls away from you. The children who once mocked you now avoid you entirely. The beggars at the church steps have changed faces half a dozen times since you first joined their line. Even your clients come less often. The city wants youth, vigor, novelty, even in superstition. There are always new astrologers, younger and louder, more willing to promise what you have learned never to guarantee. They swagger through the squares, peddling charts and lucky charms, as if the city's memory is shorter than a mayfly's life. Your eyesight weakens. The symbols blur. The stars seem dimmer or further away, and the letters in your treatises dance spitefully just out of focus. Candlelight, once your ally, now brings only headaches and squinting. You take longer to draw your charts, sometimes misplacing planets, sometimes forgetting which house the moon should occupy. Your hands shake when you write, the ink spattering in trembling lines. Even your voice falters, hoarse from years of cold air and stifled anxiety. Your world contracts. The narrow streets, once so full of menace and possibility, become harder to cross. You lose your place among the daily rituals. The baker no longer nods when you pass. The market women no longer bother to mutter about your presence. You walk slower, careful not to slip, careful not to catch the eye of anyone who might wonder why you are still here, still breathing, still holding on to the scraps of your strange vocation. Sometimes you try to teach what you know to those who ask. A curious apprentice here, a lost child there, but most turn away before you have finished your first sentence, impatient or embarrassed. You are a relic, a faded cautionary tale of what comes to those who chase knowledge too far from safety. The young do not want your doubts, your cautions, your warnings about the city's sharp memory and sharper teeth. They want answers, quick and certain, and if you cannot give them, they leave to find someone who will. You hear stories about other old men, some who die in their sleep and are not discovered for days, some who simply disappear, the city swallowing them whole. You wonder if anyone will notice when you are gone. Your neighbors will shrug. The city guards will clear out your room for the next tenant, and your precious treatises, your lifetime of notes and star charts, will be used to light someone else's fire on a cold night. Your body is a map of all your failures, the limp from a fall on an icy morning, the constant cough that never leaves, the fingers twisted by years of cold and ink and fear. Some mornings, you barely manage to rise from your pallet. The urge to lie down and never rise again is powerful, a kind of comfort in the idea of being finished, of escaping the city's hunger and suspicion once and for all. Yet, you continue. Out of habit more than hope, you trace the movements of the stars. Add a few more crooked lines to your endless charts. Say the same cautious words to the rare client who still seeks you out. You find that you are more invisible than ever, free perhaps to walk in silence, but also forgotten. The city moves around you, its business unchanged, its appetite undiminished. There are moments when you recall the faces of those who once mattered to you, a fellow scholar long gone, a friend who risked his life for a shared secret, the merchant's daughter whose fortune you rid in a moment of rare honesty. Their memories flicker in and out of reach, as dim as the stars on a cloudy night. You realize slowly that oblivion is the city's final gift. It is not hatred or vengeance that erases you, but simple indifference, a forgetting as thorough as any curse. You are not mourned or missed, you are simply gone, your presence reduced to a faint impression in the dust on your empty bed. The city does not pause, it does not remember. You become a rumor, then not even that. A shape glimpsed in passing, a whisper that fades with the wind. And still, the stars turn overhead, unchanging and unmoved, as they always have and always will. In the end, death comes as it always does, without drama, without warning, without the dignity of prophecy or the grandeur of fate. You feel it first as an absence, a thinning of your world, a quieting of your breath, a fading of the cold that once gnawed at your bones. There is no witness, no friend holding your hand, no priest murmuring last rites. The city is too busy, too indifferent to care for your passing. Your last moments are spent in the same dim room where you charted the heavens, surrounded by scraps of ink stained parchment and the faint odor of old candle wax. There is no agony, only exhaustion, a settling of weight, a surrender. You do not rage, you do not weep. You slip quietly into the dark, barely more than a sigh, as if you were only one more draft whisked through the cracks in your window. The stars outside continue their indifferent march, heedless of your final breath. The city's noises carry on, dogs barking, boots on stone, distant laughter. Life moves forward, your absence as unremarkable as a missing cobblestone in the street. Perhaps someone notices eventually. A landlord comes to collect his rent and finds your room still, the embers in your tiny hearth long gone cold. He pokes your body with a stick, curses the inconvenience, and calls for the city guards to dispose of the remains. The neighbors mutter among themselves, trading theories and stale gossip. Was it the cold, the hunger, or the loneliness that finally did you in? No one knows, and no one cares enough to find out. The priest who is summoned to perform your burial barely remembers your face. He mumbles the same half hearted prayers over your shrouded form as he has for countless others. There is no procession, no mourners, no weeping children, or grateful clients. Your body is loaded onto a cart with the week's other dead, paupers, beggars, unclaimed infants. You are taken outside the city gates to a common grave, where the earth is churned and restless from so many lives ending in obscurity. Your few possessions are gathered without ceremony. The precious treatises, your life's work, are thumbed through by the curious and the bored. Some pages are torn for kindling, others crumpled and tossed aside. A child finds a star chart and laughs at the strange symbols before letting the wind carry it away. Your notes are scattered, your carefully drawn diagrams trampled into the mud. What once seemed so vital is lost in minutes, reduced to rubbish by hands that never cared for the mysteries you chased. And yet, for a few days, there are traces of your life, echoes that linger in the minds of those who crossed your path. An old woman at the well remembers the talisman you gave her. A baker grumbles about the day your prediction spoiled his bread. A child, now grown, recalls a night spent watching you trace constellations on the cold stone. These are not stories of greatness, not even of kindness, but of small encounters, oddities in the ceaseless pattern of the city's life. You are spoken of for a while, your name a whisper in the marketplace, a passing subject in tavern talk. Did you hear about the old astrologer? Gone at last, they say. He must have known his end was coming. All those charts and signs, what good did they do him? Some laugh, some shrug, some cross themselves against ill fortune. After a week, even these faint memories fade. New gossip, new hunger, new misfortunes fill the empty space you have left. Posterity is not for you. There will be no statue, no poem, no chronicle recording your insights. If your name survives, it does so only as a faint smudge on a half legible list, a forgotten scribble in a parish ledger, a whisper lost in the wind. Perhaps, in some distant future, a scrap of your writing will be found, misunderstood and meaningless, or maybe a star you mapped will still burn far above the city that never remembered your name. The city rolls onward, as heedless of your death as it was of your life. The stars keep turning, silent and cold, indifferent to the hopes and failures of those below. Your story, like so many others, is swallowed by the night, a brief flicker gone before it was noticed. And yet, for one moment, the world is a little quieter. Perhaps, somewhere in the silence, the faint echo of your search for meaning lingers. Then the city breathes again, and the darkness closes over all.